Hello and welcome to our webinar, Digital Transformations of the Commercial Model, Getting the Technology Right. We're thrilled you're here with us today and look forward to addressing your questions during today's session. I'm Emma Nuckman and I'll be moderating. Just a few housekeeping notes. We want this session to be very interactive. So at any point, go ahead and participate in the group chat. You can input your questions in the Q&A widget. If there's any questions we don't get to during today's session, we'll be sure to follow up after the webinar. We have some great related content for you to check out by clicking on the related content icon that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. And feel free to click around our new webinar console to request a demo, listen to our latest CS podcast, and check out other impact webinars. We'd love your participation in a brief survey post-webinar as well. I'd love to introduce our presenters today, Maria Klatchko, Thomas Mache, Kapil Nair. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Maria, let's start things off with you today.
So today, welcome to our Digital Transformation of the Commercial Model webinar. We are very excited to talk to you about this because this is the talk of the town. This is things that people talk and ask us all the time. So we are very happy to see you here and hope to have a great discussion. One of the notes that we made as we were preparing to this webinar is that according to IDC, as an industry, life sciences lag behind its counterparts, such as retail and financial services. Why is that? And probably we all see it and feel it in our own life. We know that retail services such as Amazon are completely online now. They have sophisticated analytics to segment customers, and they accumulate and use vast amounts of data. And the same with financial services and some of the other forerunners. And yet life sciences are quite behind. I think the leading companies in this area, the top pharma has gone through a significant journey over the last 5 years to accumulate a lot of data and create some of the sophisticated analytics and customer engagement model and their own decision support tools, but many of the emerging pharmas are still making the first steps and just pulling together their first pieces of data to create their first dashboards. So overall, I think we are a bit behind, but the interestingly, it is changing now. And if before COVID, we have some people perceiving this as a nice to have. Today, more and more pharma companies perceive digital as a must-have capability and trying to really catch up. Was an interesting quote that was said by Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, last year, where he said that in 2 months we made more digital progress than in the previous 2 years. And that's true because all of the healthcare moved due to COVID on the online. There was 400% increase in telemedicine call. More than 60% of doctors prefer virtual visits from the reps. And this is here to stay. We had a survey last year on the quarterly basis, so in summer and in fall, and then repeating in the winter, about the doctors' preferences for engagement with manufacturers, with pharma companies. And obviously, everything went very much online and digital at the beginning of COVID pandemics, but even as we are coming out of pandemics, a lot of those preferences are staying put. A lot of those preferences are for the long term because doctors now realize how much easier it might be to talk to the rep via Zoom or via call. You don't have to schedule it and you can get the information that you need at the time when you need it. So we expect, and our survey recipients have confirmed, that preference for digital channels will continue. At the same time, if you think about usage of the data for the decision-making, internal decision-making, or for powering such processes as supply chain or HR analytics, manufacturing, many of the commercial processes, usage has also growing. 64% of respondents have invested in AI programs and data collection and data transformation programs. And yet there is still a room to grow. A quarter of the companies that were surveyed by Operational Excellence and Transformation Report lack self-service business intelligence capabilities, which means that they may have data, but it's not at the fingertip of their decision makers. And this is some of these gaps in ability to talk to customers digitally, ability to provide the decision support to your internal headquarter personnel. All of these gaps are really stopped being nice to have and are must-have capabilities now. So with that, I'll transfer back to Emma, and she will tee up the questions that we've collected for the last month from you.
Perfect. Thanks, Maria. So we'll start this off. Kapil, I'm really interested to set the stage here. In your opinion, what is the scope of digital?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think if you ask all three of us here, I think you will get a different answer. Because if you ask Maria, she will talk about the scope is all about the customer interactions. How do we make that experience better? Tom will talk about how digital can improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of commercial operations, bring all of that AI to the floor. So it varies quite a bit. But what we have seen in commercial, there are three broad categories where digital is playing a big role. One, I would say, is bringing new products to the market. These are digital products that are companion apps or perhaps even FDA-approved therapies, which are up and coming and really becoming a big driver for digital. Second, I would say, is the efficiency and effectiveness of how commercial processes are working, bringing some of these automation, AI component to elevate that. Third key one is the commercial, essentially the customer interactions and the customer experience, which Maria's favorite topic is, and making sure that you are delivering right insights and right content to your customers and understanding their behavior to improve their experience with the interactions you have day in, day out. Now, these three topics are broadly, we have seen quite a bit getting traction in digital.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Tom, we want to know, how does rethinking digital change commercial operations?
The change in commercial operation is going to be significant. As Maria mentioned, first of all, we've seen quite a bit of an increase in the investments in this space. We haven't seen true digital transformation yet, but I think it's only a matter of time. And before I get into this, let me give a little bit of definition, because commercial operations is one of these spaces, as Kapil says, that means different things to different people. So when I say commercial operations, I view it in the broad sense of the term, including activities like channel investment optimization, field force, design, sizing, structure, alignment, incentive compensation, all the way to commercial execution. And that when you view it in this sense of the term, commercial operations has been somewhat insulated from digital transformation, but that's going to change. And we feel that's going to change because there's lots of room to improve. If you take commercial operations today, this is a space that is highly fragmented, that is heavily siloed. It's a space that is structured in cycles that are discrete, dated, based on data that becomes old very quickly and results in guidance that becomes irrelevant very quickly also to the different actors in your go-to-market strategy. And digital gives organizations the opportunity to improve on all of that. So first of all, digital gives you the opportunity to address the silos. Digital will enable pharma organizations to enable truly holistic, truly omni-channel go-to-market strategy and address and lower some of the big traditional silos that exist in pharma between sales and marketing, for example. But the second piece also is that digital is going to enable pharma to evolve from this set, discrete process that is dated into a more continuous, more agile operation that enables organization to have an understanding of the reality on the ground at all time and to provide guidance on how to react to this reality on the ground. So in summary, I think we feel the impact is going to be substantial. It's going to be for the good, and it's going to allow organizations to be more holistic in their go-to-market, but also more dynamic.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Tom, what you described obviously sounds like a huge change. So I'd be curious to see how companies handle that. Maria, what have you seen in your experience when they are making this shift? What do people need to keep in mind?
Yeah, it is a very big change, and I think the biggest thing about it is that it's a different paradigm. It's not a lot of people go into this digital transformation with the thinking that they're going to do exactly the same things that they did before, but digitally. And it's not that, right? Amazon is not digital Barnes and Noble. It's a different business model. It's a different, it requires different capabilities. And I'll tell a quick story from my personal experience, close to healthcare, not quite pharma, but pharmacy. So CVS and then the Walgreens, they did a lot of investment into digital, creating digital transformation. And yet you try to order pills from them digitally, and you will run into problems.
Yeah.
You will have to call, or you will have to go. Like if you try, as I have tried, to get all my prescription delivery online, you will not succeed. It will be hard. Whereas there are completely digitally enabled pharmacies like Capsule, where I now switch to Capsule, and there I never call anybody. I've never talked to anyone. It's all through text. Through text, my doctor sends them a prescription, and through text, I order it to my house, and it comes. And that's it, right? So it's a very different business model. It requires that you have all the capabilities lined up to it. How you talk to customers, how you supply, how your supply chain works, right? How you deliver this. So the difficulty of that is that you have to reimagine your company from the top. So one of the pieces that we see people who are kind of closer to this transformation is the sponsorship has to be from the top. It has to be the C-level believing in the new business model. And then there needs to be a very focused team who is cross-functional, who can talk about customers, who can talk about supply chain, who can talk about manufacturing, who can talk about all aspects of the system and how they're going to work for this digital experience, right? And if you're trying to do this digital experience for a hospital or for a doctor or for a patient, right? Those are very different digital experiences. Those are different use cases. So there needs to be a focus on imagining these use cases and really lining up all the capabilities that you need to deliver them. And many of them you already have, or you will have, but some of them, and those are those pieces of information, how the information flows and how it connects and how the customer will utilize it, right? Those are the pieces that need to be reimagined. So basically, it requires high-level commitment and sponsorship. You need to shrink the change, so you need to maybe start with one business unit or one brand that is in the most need of this. Of course, it's new way of working required. It's not just organizing kind of people, the same people doing slightly different things. It's reorganizing around those use cases and creating new teams who come with different expertise and enable that change. And we do see some companies doing it, kind of starting to do that more effectively, and we expect to start seeing it more.
Perfect. And I think, Maria, that example you gave about the pharmacy completely resonated with me. So I think that's a really good point to think about making that shift. So thank you for that. And obviously with the shift to digital, outcomes, tons of data. So I'd be curious to know what kind of data is needed. What do we recommend as maybe a nice to have or essential data? So Kapil, do you want to tell us a little bit more about all of the information that we're getting out of this?
Yeah, I think in 2006, somebody coined this term, data is the new oil. I know we're still talking about that, and it is true. I actually think that data is better than oil because, see, with like oil, data is abundant. It's not going to go away. And you can reuse it over and over, unlike oil. And actually, it gets better. The more you use it, the data gets better. But the more of your algorithms are using. So I think it's better than oil, not just new oil.
And it's green.
Yeah. So coming back to the basic of the data, I think for commercial, if you look at sales activity, which is coming out of your CRM, market access, and your master data, these are the basic bread and butter that you want to start with. Another key thing that is important is all your omni-channel data, which is all of your touch points, whether it's from campaigns, various websites, ads, you name it, all of these data that you're collecting. That is a good starting point for you to start your journey. Now, you talked about what are nice to have. What are the new things that we've seen quite a bit of clients investing into is the visibility of the patient side to understand the journey. So if you have patient support programs or perhaps claims or EMR data, these are also a key component that will enable the patient journey. However, I will mention it that there are therapeutic areas like rare disease or oncology. Over there, these patient actually data is a must-have. It's becoming not a nice to have, but in some other therapeutic areas, it could be a nice to have to give you an edge. Another nice to have component is if you have supply chain data or perhaps starting to use public data, which can give you a huge upside once you blend all of this data together. And as I mentioned, the data is new oil. It's the same thing. You have to be able to find a way to extract value out of this oil. And the same way you need this data to come together. It's not just important to have this data, but to have it and integrate it at one place and be able to access it.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I love that analogy about oil. So tell us, in that vein too, what capabilities and building blocks are really needed for digital to kind of harness and put the oil in the engine there to power that, to power
yeah.
the data.
So certainly if you have a bicycle, this oil is not going to help you. You will need an engine to harness the power, as you said. And what we will recommend, I've seen that a platform that is integrating all of your data, and especially at cloud, is a foundational component. Why at cloud? You need something that can expand as your needs expanding, as you're venturing out into new data sources, into new therapeutic areas. So cloud is the way to go, and also it helps you reduce your upfront spend with just get you jumpstart. Second thing is a customer 360-degree view. And when I say customer, it could be an HCP or an accounts or payers. It's essentially all of your customers in this space that you want to have all the touch points in one place, and that allows you to have the interactions and be able to see and touch it. Then there is once you have all of this data, you want to make sure that you are been able to catalog it, be able to tell what data is what, how can you use it, what are some of the rules behind it, to be able to build trust in this data and be able to understand the level of quality that you're providing for this data. And last but not least, the apps and the tools that are needed to be able to use the insights in your organization. There are many, many apps analytics that are already being provided on the cloud by various vendors that are already pre-built out there. You can leverage them, or there are apps which are open source, which allows an analyst or a data scientist to be able to touch and feel and experiment with this data and perhaps eventually industrialize some of the good use cases that you have. So those are some of the things that allows you to bring the data together, understand the data, and be able to have trust in it and be able to make sense out of it.
Perfect. And I love that you brought up the point about analytics too, which is the perfect segue, and looking at it from the digital experience. So Maria, I would really love to know from your perspective, you could share an example relevant to your space about the typical analytics required that you've seen.
Well, there is really a lot, and it's kind of hard to fit it all.
Sure.
But if we are here kind of focusing on specifically commercial, and I think there are a few building blocks of analytics that right now most of the advanced companies already have, and maybe some of the others catching up. Next best action is one of these analytical pieces that we see more and more companies have, and it's a complex AI-driven model that can suggest the best sequence of interactions, the best touch points, what is the channel of the touch point, and even lately, what should be the content of the touch point, right? And that next best action can involve many subcomponents depending on what your drug requires, right? And what kind of events are meaningful. So these various event predictors are kind of part of next best action, but they also can be valuable in their own right. And right now, there is so many amazing predictive models that we've seen recently, right? Ability to predict the next patient for the rare disease, ability to prevent the switches that the doctors make and get off and on the brand, and propensity of doctor to put on the next level of therapy for various next. To select the next brand depending on various content that he receives, and many others. And another line of analytics that is very quickly evolving is the content analytics, right? So more and more we are able to see what our doctors, our patients click on, and what type of content they prefer. The interesting thing that blew my mind recently was that apparently people open emails differently. Some people would open with identical emails. Some people would open it if there are human faces in the header, and some people would not. And other people would open it if there is some science, like some petri dishes on it, and some people would not. I mean, it's just amazing how much of things that we never think about and never think it matters, but it really does matter. And so we can meaningfully and significantly increase the level of the acceptance of our message or opening of our channels by analyzing what each particular customer is looking for, what are their predilections are, what content they react to, and also what their questions are. So it's just amazing what can be predicted. Dynamic targeting is another piece where I think in the olden days, and Tom has mentioned that, right? In the olden days, we were doing targeting once a quarter, and now that's not good enough, right? We have data that comes daily. We have things change, customers move, patient events happen. So our ability to say, hey, this week focus on X, right? That is very critical, and we believe that it gives you, again, significant lift versus the quarterly targeting. Excellent. So, I mean, there are many more, and again, it's just amazing to see how analytics has evolved in the last, literally 3 years, right? 3-5 years maybe. But it is an arms race right now between the companies to create the smartest analytics and to drive as much as possible its decision making and engagement, customer engagement with more and more sophisticated analytics.
Absolutely. No, it's very interesting the way we consume content and all of the data points there. So I'd like to shift soon into some of the questions from our audience, but Kapil, quickly, some of this sounds expensive. So can you talk about if small pharma can afford all of these capabilities?
So a short answer is absolutely. I actually work with many small pharma and emerging pharma companies, helping them launching their first product. And I remember the whole digital and omni-channel used to be, yeah, we will launch our product, we'll get to it afterwards. But now, since the COVID, actually everybody's asking that, hey, what digital capabilities, omni-channel we will launch when we launch our product. So it is changing. It's sort of becoming their must-have now. And frankly, I actually look at emerging pharma and the small pharma, they have advantage over the big guys. I mean, they are so nimble. Decision making is quick. 3 people get in and bring a pizza and they can make a decision. Versus the big guys would have this month's worth of committees and meetings that are going on and business cases. So that's where they are moving forward, and how they can afford it. Many of the capabilities that I mentioned earlier, or even the analytics that Maria were talking about, they're available on the cloud by either many software as a service vendors and these products. And emerging pharma companies, these small pharma, they don't have any baggage. They don't have any large investments made in other things. So they are very quick to jump on these capabilities and buy these and be able to jumpstart their programs at a very little cost, because all of this is available as a subscription basis. So yes, I've seen them working. As a matter of fact, I would say over 90% already started their journey into the digital, and few of them I've seen, they have seen tremendous results and easily beating the big guys into this game very quickly.
Nice. Yeah, that's impressive. Small but mighty. I like that.
Yeah.
Now let's move into the questions from our audience. Tom, this one's for you. They're asking, do you have more examples of how to measure effects, for instance, like customer satisfaction of a numerous amount of HCP?
Well, to tag on to Kapil, if data is the new oil, I would say measurement and learning is the new gold. So with digital, there's a whole lot of new data that's available to measure the impact of your campaigns. You have things like emails, website clicks, videos seen, banner ads viewed. And all of this data gives your organization the ability to understand the engagement that they're creating in the customer base. And I think there's some really good techniques, attribution models to understand the impact of each one of these individual tactics and how they contribute to the end effect. But one of the things that we would recommend to organizations to want to have a more holistic understanding of the impact of a new program is to be a little more scientific about it, to conduct true scientific experiments, maybe implement in the form of early experienced teams, and then do true test controls to compare how these programs are faring compared to the rest of their organizations. So I think there's a lot of good techniques to really assess the impact. The last thing that I'd say on this is when you think about measurement, you can't continue to measure only on a yearly basis or a quarterly basis. You need to have a measurement program that is continuous, that allows you to have a real-time understanding of the realities on the ground so that you can take action in a short amount of time to respond to a given situation that has occurred on the ground.
Perfect. No, I love that. And I like the slogan you came up with. I think we should put that on a shirt. I think we have time for about 2 more questions here. One looking at evolving technology and how companies can keep up. So Kapil, tell us a little bit about that. How can organizations enable data and analytics capabilities and keep up with things that are constantly changing?
Yeah, I mean, that's holy grail, right? The faster, better, cheaper way to get there. I think one of the things we have seen a big shift, personally, I have not seen anyone coming up with these multi-year programs and, building these giant capabilities, because frankly, nobody has patience these days. Everybody's looking for a fast turnaround. Time to market is key. So those big programs are gone. Those days are long gone. A lot of time now, the quicker way to implement this is looking for platforms that are already available on the cloud. And look for something that is more verticalized. So don't look for something that's plain vanilla and you're still figuring it out how to, design it for your organization. There are many platforms out there which are verticalized and provide you accelerators, frankly, to do your bread and butter stuff very, very quickly out of the box, bringing best-in-class practices, which industry is already following. So leverage some of those. Don't need to reinvent the wheel if it's already done for you. Then focus on some of the use cases. Don't try to boil the ocean. Pick something that you have a good sense of what value it will generate. And frankly, look for stakeholders who are ready to jump into this digital revolution with you, because as you heard earlier, change is very difficult. This is not a same old way of doing things. You need a mindset which is different, and you want a partner that's going to work with you. And once you show success, build capability and credibility, you build on top of it, incrementally add value, and continue to develop that. And focus on what is more important to you in your organization, whether it's compliance, whether it's making sure that all the good data is coming together and you are enabling data science. So some of those goals you need to align together, and that should do it.
Perfect. So I think that's a great idea. Partnership is definitely key. In the same vein too, we'll end with this question for you, Tom. Just thinking about where to get started. We have a senior leader who is in the audience that needs to implement a new technology infrastructure, but just has no idea how to get that going. So what advice will you leave our audience with today to begin to make these changes?
So we've talked a lot about data. So that would be kind of a good place to look, building your data capabilities. Building your learning engine would be another kind of good area to explore, or things like building kind of your agile, local, and omni-channel planning capabilities. All of these, I think, are good places to start. But I think one of the things that I would advise anyone who is starting in this is, first of all, to not reinvent the wheel, right? I think you don't want anyone to get engaged in an initiative where they're going to take 3 years to build something that already exists and build something that will only be a pale comparison compared to the capability that already exists. So do your due diligence, do a robust buy versus build analysis to make sure that you're really investing your dollars where it counts. And then last thing that I'll say, Maria touched upon it, is, a digital transformation program is a program that's gonna encounter some resistance, right? You're building something that's gonna change the way a good part of your organization operates. You're gonna encounter resistance, so make sure that you prioritize also change management. Make sure that you articulate where you're going, a long-term vision that addresses the potential resistance that stakeholders may have and highlights the value that these stakeholders may get in the new capabilities. Make sure also that you recruit senior level sponsorship to make sure that you get the right level of support once you hit the bumps, and then make sure that you're proactive in your communication. But good luck. I think these are a few ideas. Hopefully they're useful.
Perfect.
I will add one to it.
Sure.
One thing I learned is don't do it yourself. Find a good partner. This thing, there are many of them who have already done it in the journey. Don't do it on your own.
Very sage advice. I like that a lot. We're at time. So for those of you that we didn't get to your questions today, we'll be happy to follow up after the session. So we hope you can join us again June 9th for our next webinar, Emerging Pharma First Launch and Partnering Insights from 2011 to 2020. So Maria, Tom, Kapil, you were amazing presenters today. Thank you so much. And we hope the audience enjoyed this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.